So on this graph, on my y-axis, I have the food supply, kilocalories per person per day. And on my x-axis, I have the income per person, GDP per capita. Now, this is 2007. This is the latest data that was collected, and you can see that it has a very clear, defined linear line. Now, just so you know that what you're looking at. So the circles represent different countries, and they're sorted by color, by geographic regions as seen in the upper right-hand corner. The yellow represents the Americas, the orange represents Europe and Central Asia, blue represents Sub-Saharan Africa, green Middle East and North Africa. The light blue is South Asia, and finally the red is East Asia and the Pacific. Now the size of the circle represents the population, and if you hover over one, you'll be able to see the population total in your lower right hand corner. So I'm going to play the data for you from the year that it was initially collected from, which was 1961, and it ends in 2007, so that you can have a look at the movements of the countries. There's some randomly moving countries here that have an interesting patterns, and you can see there's some countries that move backwards. And I'll analyze this in just a minute. So to analyze the data, I have drawn some boxes on the graph to represent kind of the cluster of each country, and I've sorted that by color of the geographic region, and you can see that here. So the South Asia is still together in the little box, the light blue, because this is where the data begins, right? And there are some outliers from the general cluster of all the countries. Up here we have Switzerland, this is Kuwait, that is Bermuda, this is Brunei, and this is Saudi Arabia. And some of these countries are because of their natural resources that make them have higher income per person, as they are trading with other countries, and therefore they have more jobs. So Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, East Asia, and the Pacific are kind of clustered here together, and they have 4 anomalies each. You can see there's blue countries and red countries outside of this general box area. For the yellow, there are 6 anomalies, which is the Americas. Orange, there's just 1 anomaly, which is Switzerland, and that is all the data we have. Now the trends are that the colder countries have higher food supply. Countries with little development have very little food, and you can see that with the red and blue boxes. South Africa is kind of out from the Sub-Saharan Africa. An example of how it is out there is because it has higher development and it developed faster than the others. Patterns, generally the higher the income, the higher the food supply, and the Spearman rank, which I will talk about later, verifies this. So you can see that there's a positive linear line, even though there are a number of outliers. Now, anomalies to these trends and patterns is that there are about 5 outliers that I mentioned earlier, and besides them being there because of their resources, these may be because of post-war issues, political, economic, and social problems, or advantages in some other countries' cases. Now, as you take a look at 1981, you can see that the movement of the data, East Asia and the Pacific are kind of moving forward, and so are some other sub-Saharan African countries are moving up. The Middle East and North Africa still stay in the middle, not really anywhere, but there are a couple of outliers, like some come out way up in the income per person, and some are way low, with South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and East Asia and the Pacific. Here, the trends that you can see, well, what I'll be analyzing is that the US is here above, and some countries, well, mostly East Asia and the Pacific are advancing really quickly in comparison to the other ones that are just moving at kind of like a steady pace. So the US is on top now, and this is due to the country investing in mostly East Asian and Pacific countries that needed to develop faster. The investment of the US to these countries kind of makes them advance quicker, and the US invests in these countries because there is cheaper labor since the country needs development. So there are a lot less outliers, and the linear line is defined more. And finally here, you can see that the linear line is completely clear. There are just a couple, just like two anomalies from the data, and three from like geographic region, and the DRC is one of them, and I'll explain that further. The Spearman rank, which I spoke of earlier, can be put in form of a graph, and on my Y, I have the kilocalories per person per day rank and the rank of the GDP per capita. So I went on Nation Master, a site that has all the data of different countries and different variables, and I looked at the ranking of countries in that, and I picked 10, one country out of each 10 in by the number of ranking, and I graphed that data here. And to find the actual Spearman rank, I used this equation, and I ended up with my Spearman rank being 0.688. Now, what is the Spearman rank and what does it say? The Spearman rank shows you the significance of variables correlating, whether they just them having a pattern and a trend is just by accident or just by chance, or there's an actual correlation between the two, like one definitely causes the other. Now, since my Spearman rank was above, so I chose 20 countries, right? And so if my level of significance is 0.01, which means that is a high significance, which is 99% certainty that the result did not occur by chance, but it is, however, a correlation. That the GDP per capita definitely has an effect on the number of kilocalories per day. So I've picked two countries that have almost completely opposite movements. They are opposite movements, and I'll explain why they moved the way they moved. So the DRC, as you can see, is moving backwards and downwards, and the UK is moving steadily, and then it goes down and moves back up again. And the down movement here can be explained by the economic recession that happened after, post-war. This is because the food supply. So what was happening was there was a lot of rationing during the war, and after the war, kind of like the inflation made the country's kilocalories per person drop as the prices went up. But as the country's GDP increased, food became more affordable, and it's been steadily increasing since. As for the DRC, so the DRC was okay after it gained independence, which was 1961, and soon after, when the president was elected, they had wars within, and armed rebel groups would just like go fighting on the streets, and there was wars going on in the country, and that made developed countries not invest in the country, even though the Democratic of Congo is one of the richest countries with like a worth of $24 trillion in resources. Their GDP has been as low as $349.